Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 56 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for the hot hatch lineup of Gran Turismo 6 in particular. And in this particular episode we are featuring kind of an undervalued vehicle, something of a sleeper in the hatchback category, and is the base model of one of my personal favourite hot hatches that's actually not currently featured on the game. And the vehicle is the Mazda Axela, or the Mazda 3 as it's known over here in England. And my personal favourite version of this car is the MPS or Mazda Speed version with the full body kit, basically Ford Focus ST kind of performance, and it's essentially the equivalent hot hatch to the Mazda 6 or Mazda Speed 6, which is of course one of my favourite sports sedans as well. Overall, I realise more and more just what a big fan of Mazda I actually am, which I hadn't really thought of that much. There are so many models that they produce which I really like, and I can't really think of a bad car in Mazda's lineup. But put that to one side because we're talking purely, of course, about this model, and the model is the 23S, referring, of course, to the engine, because the engine in this particular model is a 2.3 litre turbo, as is the MPS version as well, and fully tuned. This hot hatch is actually fairly similar to some of the more obvious and certainly more showy and more eye-catching choices of hot hatch in more ways than you might think. For a start, there's the power. A vehicle like this, which looks relatively understated, is not a premium, and just isn't really a car that's used that often or even noticed by many people in the dealership, typically would have somewhere around probably 350-360 horsepower fully tuned. It might be allowed to have a turbo, but generally it probably wouldn't be a particularly good one. And overall, it would feel probably as though it fell just short of the mark. That's not the case with this car. It's not the most powerful of hatchbacks, of course, and certainly not as powerful as it could be, but the power that it is endowed with, fully tuned in particular, is not bad. 411 horsepower is certainly good enough to rival many of the other hot hatches in this series, especially some of the larger ones. As far as torque, it's putting out 300 foot-pounds, which is kind of what you'd expect of one of the higher grade hot hatches, somewhere above or below 300, and the weight for a vehicle of its size is very good. It only weighs 1,030 kilos, and for a hot hatch which is the size that this car is, that really is an impressive weight. A lot of the other similar sized hatches like the Focus, the Megane and various others do weigh a fair bit more than that. As far as horsepower per tonne, you're looking at a fraction under 400, which is pretty good again, especially for a sleeper hatch, and the PP when fully tuned is also reasonably high at 523. Not ridiculously high, but pretty high nonetheless. As far as the price, well, it's a Japanese car, so you'd expect a low price, and it is low. This car only costs 19.5 grand, and for a hot hatch, that is a really good price, and in fact it makes it significantly cheaper than many of the other more modern, larger hot hatch selections from companies like Ford, Audi, Alfa Romeo and various others. As far as performance, it's pretty good. The acceleration is pretty strong, the top end speed is not bad at all, and the handling, although it does have a tendency to be heavier, because it's not quite as sporty and as upgraded as something like the Mazda Speed version would be already, it's still more than good enough to rival many of the other cars in this series, especially the bigger ones. As far as its overall ability, I would say that this is a vehicle which is underestimated by many people, just downright forgotten even, for the most part, but it is a car which, in the hot hatch category in particular, can actually be surprisingly competitive. Now, this is a vehicle which has quite a lot of power for its PP, understandably so given that it is a good car, but you do need to be careful because of that when and where you choose to use it. This car can and will win races for you on certain tracks at certain PP levels, but it's not some kind of all-conquering thing in a similar way to stuff like the Focus RS or the Golf R32 or the like. It's not necessarily that good, but it is good. I would easily put this particular hot hatch on par with something like the Volvo C30, the Citroen C4, maybe the slightly older shape Ford Focus ST. For vehicles like that, this vehicle could actually give them a really good run for their money, and it's a complete sleeper. It's not the top of the range model, it's not particularly showy or shouty with its visuals, and it just does the job for a really cheap price. So although it's not a premium, and it's not the top of the range model, I would have personally much preferred the MPS version, of course, but those things being as they are the case, it's still very good. And this car deserves, I think, more attention than it actually gets. And this, of course, was also featured in my Dark series. It's an undervalued hot hatch, which deserves more attention. So that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.